Oh, I found it. Okay, court documents. Okay, so just a little bit of disclaimer. I think there's going to be a lot of things in here that's going to be very disturbing. Similar to what we discussed in Ruby Frankie's plea deal doc. I, Jodi Nan Hildebrandt, hereby acknowledge and certify that I have been advised of and that I understand the following facts and rights. Notification of charges. I am pleading guilty to the following crimes. So we have 4 counts here of aggravated child, up to 1 to 15 years for each one. Count 1, the defendant's action involved the physical torture of RF. Initially, RF was forced to do physical tasks for hours and days at a time. These include wall sits, carrying boxes full of books up and down the stairs, and working outside. Eventually, RF was forced to do outside labor without shoes and in the summer heat. He was forced to stand in direct sunlight for several days, and he was forced to remain outside all hours of the day and night for extended periods of time. These actions result in repeated and serious sunburns with blistered and sloughing skin. RF was denied adequate water for several of the days he was required to remain in the summer heat. He was punished when he was secretly consumed water. He was denied sufficient food, and when given food, he was given very plain meals like rice and chicken, while others in the house ate regular, more flavorful meals. He was isolated from other people and denied all forms of entertainment, including books, notebooks, and electronics. So that count right there is similar to the one that we saw in Ruby Frankie's. In addition, after RF attempted to run away in July, his hands and feet were regularly bound. Binding included being tied to an adult and to weights. Many times, the binding included using 2 sets of handcuffs, one on RF's wrist, one on his ankles. At times, with RF lying on his stomach, ropes were tied to 2 sets of handcuffs together so that his arms and lower legs were lifted off the ground. Like, how could you think this is okay? And Ruby Frankie, because, when I didn't know much about Ruby Frankie, I was like, maybe Ruby Frankie didn't know what was going on. But it seems like Ruby Frankie was also actively participating in this. So the biting resulted in injuries to RF's wrists and ankles where the handcuffs cut through the skin and damaged the muscle chest tissue. These injuries were treated with homeopathic remedies and covered with duct tape. Then the bitings were placed on top of the duct tape. Count 2. The action described above caused severe emotions harm to RF due to the fact that they began in May and escalated to the summer months. Additionally, the defendant, another adult, regularly sought to indoctrinate RF and convince him of that. Is that Ruby Frankie, I guess? Going to convince him that 1, he was evil and possessed. 2, he needed to willingly be obedient to avoid punishments. 3, the punishments were necessary to repent. He was also told that everything that was being done to him were acts of love. Count 3. The defendant's action also caused severe emotional harm to EF. Other than binding and the instance of abuse RF is subject to, EF was subject to the same treatment as her brother. She was isolated, forced to do tasks, physical tasks, remain outside, denied food and water. She was also repeatedly told she was evil and possessed. The punishments were necessary for her to be obedient and to repent. And these things were being done to her in order to help her. EF was convinced that she was evil and needed to go through these things in order to repent. The defendant's action caused 2 more physical injuries to EF. She was forced to do work outside in the heat barefoot. She was also forced to run barefoot on dirt roads for extended periods of time. EF's feet were repeatedly injured and she was repeatedly sunburned. When examined on August 30th, these wounds were apparent by scabs, blisters, and sloughing skin. Additionally, the defendant either physically forced or coerced EF to jump into a cactus multiple times. That is the part that that last sentence right there was what someone pointed out earlier, that this last sentence was not in Ruby Frankie's plea agreement. This is Ruby Frankie's right here. Let me just look for it. Maybe I missed it, but I feel like I would have remembered that. Yeah, I don't see the cactus part in here. When examined, these wounds were apparent by scabs, blisters, and sloughing skin. So this is Ruby Frankie's. This is Jodi Hildebrandt's. I don't understand this. Yeah, I don't know. Pam. Yeah. So the reason why I was thinking about Pam was because remember Pam, she was like, well, I don't really know Ruby Frankie, but I was down to take her kids, because I know if I have her kids over, they can do chores in my house. I have relatives coming to visit and they can help me clean the house and mop the floors. It's like, oh my God. All she cares about is oh, yay, free child labor. Yay. Oh, is it? Yeah. I wasn't really sure. Sloughing. I was going to look it up, but I didn't want to stop reading. I was going to have Google tell me.
Slough.
Slough. That's slough?
Slough.
What? Slough? Like fluff, but slough?
Slough.
Sloughing. Sloughing? All right, so that's it for Jodi Hildebrandt. Again, they are awaiting sentencing February 20th. Sentencing is not going to be determined by the judge or the prosecutor. It's going to go through the Utah's probation office. And yeah, we'll see what happens then. Ruby Franke's sentencing is going to be at 10 a.m. on February, 20th or 10th? I think February 20th, right? And then Jodi Hildebrandt's will be 30 minutes after that. So it'll probably be similar where we are just going to wait for the footage to come out afterwards because it's probably not going to be live stream. But we'll wait for the footage to come out afterwards because, it comes out relatively pretty quick, like I think within 30 minutes. So it's not too bad. And then we'll cover it then. I do want to read some segments of Jodi Hildebrandt's book. I mentioned this earlier because someone posted in the Reddit and they read the sample portion of it where Jodi Hildebrandt goes into like her childhood, her background and stuff like that. And like, I'm like, things are starting to maybe make sense. Not like to justify what she did, but to kind of like understand how the fuck she ended up to be such a twisted ass person. So, but again, people who go through like the trauma that Jodi went through, it doesn't mean you're going to become this, like a child abuser yourself, right? There are a lot of people who went through the same trauma that Jodi went through, and they come out as really good people. And they're very mindful of how they treat their next generation, like when they have kids, right? So like, you can have people who went through traumatic things and they could be assholes themselves when they have kids. Or you can have people who go through traumatic things and they're like, you know what, for the next generation, like when I have kids, I'm never going to do this to my kids. I'm going to be such a good fucking parent because I never want to have a screwed up child, and I feel like there's just different types of people out there. And Jodi just took the wrong fucking path where she decides to just be a really horrible fucking person. And maybe her being able to manipulate all these families, get money from them, and it was working. It was just reinforcing her negative, her really awful, disgusting behavior.